Thank you all for joining us here today. The purpose of this meeting is to determine eligibility for special education services for Alexander Stevens. Alexander is a young man who his parents describe as being loving, caring, and friendly, and that he possesses a great memory. They also say that he can be very moody and impulsive at times, and is frequent to temper tantrums. Alexander will be turning 4 next month. He is in good health, with the notable exception of having asthma, for which he takes Singulair. His parents, Bob and Sarah Stevens, say that they have no concerns regarding his hearing or vision. Alexander has recently undergone early childhood checkup, and no concerns were noted. Alexander is an only child who lives at home with his parents. His parents have begun taking a parenting class and have recently implemented a positive behavior support plan at home to try to help Alexander transition through his more difficult times of disruptive behavior. Alexander has attended the Rockwood Early School for the past 11 months as part of their morning preschool class. In the afternoon, he attends the Littlest Learners Daycare Center. At both preschool and daycare, Alexander has shown great difficulty with peer interactions. He has demonstrated unsafe behavior such as kicking and biting his peers. He occasionally will bite teachers as well. Both his preschool teacher and daycare provider have noted that Alexander has a tendency to be very impulsive and that he acts without considering the consequences of his actions. He also has frequent tantrums where he screams, throws himself on the ground, and harms peers by pinching, biting, or kicking them. Alexander was referred by his preschool teacher for a social-emotional evaluation for the purpose of ruling out a possible ADHD diagnosis. The assessment used for this evaluation was conducted using the Connors Early Childhood Behavior Rating Scale. The assessment was completed using information gathered by Alexander's parents, his preschool teacher, family history, and the clinical observation conducted by Jonathan Stevenson, the child psychologist who works with the Rockwood Early Learning School. Interviews were conducted by all the parties involved, and I provided you all with a copy of the findings of the assessment and all of the individual scores. But as you can see, Alexander's scores are elevated, indicating that there are more concerns that are typically reported for a boy his age. Alexander's score on the inattentive hyperactivity scale is in the high average range, which indicates there are slightly more concerns than are typically reported. His scores for emotional liability indicate atypical behaviors, which when combined with the scores for restless and impulsiveness, show evidence that there are greater concerns for his social-emotional development than are typical for children his age. Based on the findings of this test, Alexander meets the criteria for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, predominantly hyperactivity impulsive presentation provisional. Given Alexander's young age, a provisional diagnosis is appropriate at this time. The essential feature of ADHD is a persistent pattern of inattention and/or hyperactivity impulsivity that interferes with the child's development or functioning. Impulsivity relates to quick actions that occur in the moment without forethought and have a high potential for harm to the child or to others. Alexander bites others without warning. He may run with dangerous objects in his hands or with things in his mouth, and he will pinch or hit adults and peers. Alexander expects his demands to be met immediately and has difficulty accepting the need to wait. Symptoms associated with this diagnosis include fidgeting or squirming in seats. Alexander often leaves his seat or attempts to leave the classroom when he is required to remain in place. He's often on the go, often interrupting or intruding on others, often having difficulty waiting his turn, and often runs or climbs in situations where it is inappropriate. Alexander requires adult support to follow the classroom routines, to follow directions, and to participate. Alexander will cry when things don't go his way or he can't have what he wants immediately. He has great difficulty keeping his hands to himself and when waiting in line. Manifestations of ADHD must be present in more than one setting. Alexander meets the criteria for ADHD as symptoms are documented at home and both in his preschool and in his daycare center. His preschool teacher noted his concerns regarding the impulsivity and the need to constantly supervise Alexander in order to keep him and his peers safe. Jonathan Stevenson, a child psychologist, observed Alexander at his preschool program at the Rockwood Early School. 8 children and 4 other adults were present on this day. Alexander basically had one-on-one support throughout his morning with the assistance of a paraprofessional. When coming inside from the playground, Alexander needed adult guidance along with step-by-step directions of what he needed to do, such as hanging his coat up and going into the classroom. Alexander attempted to break away from his teacher when going inside because he saw a garbage truck and tried to rush into the parking lot after it. At circle time, Alexander was unable to have a calm and safe body as instructed. His chair was strategically placed so that it was behind the other children and none of the children were close enough for him to strike. Alexander was shown a visual timer with 5 minutes on it and reminded that after the timer went off he could have a break. He instead insisted that he wanted Play-Doh and at one point lunged forward trying to grab the hair of the little girl who was sitting in front of her. After circle time, the children washed their hands for snack and he asked his one-on-one, "Where's mommy?" His teacher reported that Alexander will frequently ask this question at least 5 or 6 times an hour. While sitting down for a snack, he said he wanted cheese, but he was told that he had brought applesauce that day. He reached across the table and grabbed the applesauce of another boy, and when that child reached out to grab his applesauce back, Alexander attempted to bite him before his one-on-one was able to intervene. Upon that act of aggression, he was removed from the group to sit in the break chair, where he and his one-on-one discussed what had just happened. After snack, Alexander and his parents met with Jonathan Stevenson for testing purposes. Jonathan administered a criterion reference test in the form of the Ages and Stages questionnaire for social and emotional development, since that is the primary area of concern for Alexander. For his age range, the ASAQ-SE cutoff score is 70. His total for this category was 155, so that indicates that referral consideration for special education is appropriate at this time. Are there any questions? Thank you.